Hello there, we meet again on another edition of Chapter 8, Transport in Animals and Plants, specifically 8.1, Transport System in Mammals. Okay, today we move on to another type of transport system in mammals. Earlier, our discussion was focused on the blood circulatory system. Now we will discuss the lymphatic system and its relationship to the blood circulatory system. Let's refresh about parts of the blood circulatory system. The blood circulatory system will have the organ, that is the heart, which you see in the center here. Then from the heart you will have blood vessels moving in and out, which are made up of the tiniest, that is the capillary, the one that transports oxygenated blood in red here, the arteries, okay, the largest being the aorta and the smallest being the arteriole, the veins, that is the one in blue, transporting deoxygenated blood, the largest being the vena cava and the smallest being the venule. Now in these blood vessels we have what we call as the blood. The blood contains blood cells such as the erythrocytes, leukocytes, platelets, and it will also contain the blood plasma that is made up of water, nutrients, waste, proteins. Now let's compare this circulatory system with the lymphatic system. This diagram represents the lymphatic system. Unlike the blood circulatory system, the lymphatic system does not have one single organ. It has a number of organs, out of which you can actually see one organ in this diagram, or more specifically one group of tissues, that is the lymph nodes, that is the swollen parts of this green line. The green lines are the lymphatic vessels. Okay, let's look at detail what other organs make up the lymphatic system. There are tonsils, thymus, lymph nodes, which I mentioned earlier, spleen, Peyer's patch, bone marrow, and appendix. Probably you are familiar with some of the organs, and maybe some you are hearing for the first time. I will explain their function in another slide. We move on to the lymphatic vessels. The smallest lymphatic vessel in the lymphatic system is known as the lymphatic capillaries, lymphatic vessels, and the largest are known as the lymphatic ducts. Now the liquid that travels inside these lymphatic vessels are known as lymph, and lymph contains only one type of blood cell, that is the lymphocyte. Okay, let's use this little cartoon character to show you the location of the lymphatic organs. We have one here at the back of our throat known as the tonsils. Okay, this cartoon here shows as if it is under your lip, but it's actually at the back of your throat when you first start to swallow food. Then we have the thymus, that is at the base of your throat, the spleen on the left of your abdomen, Peyer's patch, that is in your ileum. Then in your long bones you have your bone marrow. Then you have lymph nodes, which are not only at your armpit but all over our body. And finally we have the appendix at the beginning of our colon. Now I've colored them differently because the tonsils, thymus, Peyer's patch, lymph nodes and appendix have a stronger relationship to the immune system, which I will teach you when we reach the topic of immunity. So for today's discussion on transport, we see the role of the spleen and bone marrow in relation to transport. Let's look at what the function of the spleen is. Firstly, it is a storage organ. It stores a reserve of blood for the body so that if the person suddenly experiences loss of blood, the spleen will release its storage of blood into the circulatory system. Secondly, the spleen can help destroy old erythrocytes. Erythrocytes only have a lifespan of 120 days, after which they have to be destroyed by the spleen. Thirdly, we find the spleen can recycle the iron that it removes when it destroys the erythrocytes. Next, we look at the function of the bone marrow. Bone marrow has one important function, that is to produce all types of blood cells. This includes your erythrocytes, that is your red blood cell, all the white blood cells, that are the agranulocytes, granulocytes, neutrophil, basophil, eosinophil, lymphocyte B, lymphocyte T, and also platelets. So you see the red blood cell is directly connected to the transport system in mammals, whereas the white blood cells and the platelets will be connected to the immune system. Now you know what are lymph organs and where they are located. We move on to lymphatic vessels. The smallest of the vessels are the lymph capillaries. Then we find these capillaries will join together to make larger vessels. And along the vessels, you see these swellings. Those are the lymph nodes. Now, all these lymph vessels will actually join together at the chest region of our body, forming two lines. The first line is the right lymphatic duct. We can also say right lymph duct. And this lymph duct will finally join here at our neck, under our collarbone. Okay, that is at the right subclavian vein. So you see, from the lymphatic system, it eventually joins with the circulatory system. Now the second line over here is called the thoracic duct. The thoracic duct also will join with the subclavian vein, but on the left side. So these are the different types of lymphatic vessels and their location. Next, we move on to discuss the formation of the lymph. Now, where does lymph form? It actually forms at the junction between the arteriole and the capillary. Take note, it doesn't form at this junction between the venule and the capillary. It forms on this junction between the arteriole and the capillary junction. So what actually happens here, okay, that lymph can form? What happens is a high hydrostatic pressure develops. Okay, why should there only be a high hydrostatic pressure on this junction and not on this? Okay, the reason is because you see, from the arteriole to the capillary, there is a reduction in diameter. So as the blood is flowing very fast, suddenly we find it has to slow down because the vessels or the capillaries here have such a small diameter. So a pressure develops. It's different on this junction. At this junction, the diameter is getting bigger. So there is going to be less pressure here. Okay. So the reason why lymph forms at the arterial capillary junction is because there is a high hydrostatic pressure developing since the diameter is getting smaller. So what happens if there is a high hydrostatic pressure? We find that the blood plasma that is flowing through the blood capillary will be forced out. Not all of the blood plasma, but some. Mainly the smaller molecules such as water, glucose, amino acids will be forced out. Okay, if they are forced out, where do they go? They go to the intercellular space. That is the space outside the blood vessels. And now the blood plasma will form what we call as tissue fluid. So when the liquid was in the blood vessels, it was called blood plasma, but once it is out of the blood vessels, it is called the tissue fluid. The difference now is that in the blood vessels, the blood plasma had erythrocytes and large proteins, but now as tissue fluid, there will not be any erythrocytes or proteins because they are too large. They cannot be forced out of the blood capillaries. So then, what happens to the tissue fluid? You find that actually 90% of the tissue fluid can diffuse back into the circulatory system. How is that? Okay, as I mentioned earlier, at the junction between the venule and the capillaries, the diameter is increasing. Therefore, the hydrostatic pressure is decreasing. Once the hydrostatic pressure decreases, the tissue fluid now can actually diffuse back into the venules. But you must take note that it is only 90% that is diffusing back. There is going to be a balance of 10% of tissue fluid at the interstitial space. Now this 10% has to be returned to the blood. Otherwise, the blood is going to be thicker, causing hypertension. So how are we going to return the 10%? That is why we have what is known as the lymphatic system. The 10% of tissue fluid will diffuse into the lymph capillaries and form the liquid known as lymph. Since the lymph is actually tissue fluid, therefore it is similar to blood, with the difference that it has no erythrocytes and no proteins such as albumin and fibrinogen. However, this lymphatic system is related to the immune system, so lymph will actually be rich in leukocytes, specifically lymphocytes, which I will discuss in the chapter of immunity. So then the lymph will be transported into the lymph vessels, lymph duct, and finally join the blood circulation at the shoulders via the subclavian veins. If we take a closer look, you see these are the subclavian veins, okay, the right subclavian and the left subclavian vein, and these green color tubes here are the lymph ducts. Okay, the thoracic duct will enter the left subclavian vein, whereas the right lymphatic duct will enter the right subclavian vein. And from there, it will mix with blood to make 100%. So if we look at the function of the lymphatic system in relation to transport systems in mammals, we find it is important mainly to return that 10% of tissue fluid, okay, that was in the interstitial space back to the blood circulatory system. Okay, so remember that 10% will diffuse into the lymph capillaries, transport by the lymph vessels and lymph duct until they join the subclavian vein and enter the heart. Second function, of course, is to transport steroid hormones, ions, nutrients, and waste. Third function, to absorb nutrients. Okay, mainly the lipid-soluble nutrients such as fatty acids and glycerol, as well as vitamins A, D, E, and K. These lipid-soluble nutrients cannot diffuse directly into blood. So they diffuse into the lacteals found in the villus of ileum. Lacteals are actually lymph capillaries. And finally, of course, the lymphatic system's function is very important in defense and immunity, which is a story for another chapter. I have completed describing the lymphatic system and its relationship to the blood circulatory system. We move on next to some calculation. That is to determine the direction of fluid movement. So just now here, in the lymphatic system discussion, I explained that the high hydrostatic pressure is going to force the blood plasma out of the capillaries. So here I'm going to teach you how to calculate the pressure. Similarly, I mentioned how 90% of the tissue fluid diffuse back into the vein. So once again, I will teach you how to calculate that pressure. The movement of the fluid in and out of the capillary is determined by two pressures. One, the hydrostatic pressure that is actually forcing the small molecules out of the blood vessel, and the osmotic pressure that is actually forcing in small molecules back to the blood circulatory system. Hydrostatic pressure, which we will call HP, and osmotic pressure, which I will call OP, work in opposite directions. So if the hydrostatic pressure is higher than the osmotic pressure, molecules will be forced out. But if the osmotic pressure is higher than the hydrostatic pressure, then molecules will be diffusing in. So let's look at the formula. To calculate the net pressure either at the arterial or venule end, we need to only calculate the difference between the hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure. Now there are two formulas depending on how much information is provided in the question. The first formula is only considering the hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure of the blood. So the difference between these two pressures will determine the direction of movement. Meanwhile, the second formula is when the data given includes both the hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure of the blood, as well as the hydrostatic and osmotic pressure of the tissue fluid. So that is why it becomes HP1, that is of the blood, minus HP2, that is of the tissue fluid. Okay, and then you minus the osmotic pressure of the blood with the osmotic pressure of the tissue fluid. Now a point to remember is that when we are calculating these values, we must ignore any negative symbol given in the data of the question. Okay, however, when the final result of the calculation shows a positive value or a negative value, then there is some significance to the value. Okay, if positive, this tells us that filtration is happening, and if negative, it tells us reabsorption is happening. Okay, now we also can make a conclusion that the filtration will only happen at the arterial end of the blood capillary, and reabsorption will only happen at the venule end. Now to help convince you about the application of this formula, let me go to a question. Now in this question, they have given us the blood pressure, that is the hydrostatic pressure, at the arterial end of the capillary, that is at 32 millimeters of mercury, okay, where the arrow is pushing out, and the osmotic pressure of the blood, where the arrow is pushing in, at 22 millimeters of mercury. So if we want to know the net pressure, we just have to minus HP with OP and get a value of 10 millimeters of mercury. The answer is in positive, meaning that filtration happened. Now we look at the venule end. Okay, this time the hydrostatic pressure or blood pressure is at 15 millimeters of mercury pushing out, and the osmotic pressure of the blood or OP is at 22 millimeters of mercury pushing in. So the difference between HP, and OP this time is negative in value at negative 7 millimeters of mercury. So the negative indicates that reabsorption is happening, okay, since the osmotic pressure is bigger than the hydrostatic pressure. So this is application of formula 1. Let me show you application of formula 2. Okay, in this question, they have given us the hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure of the blood. Okay, and over here only the osmotic pressure of the tissue fluid. So when no extra information is given, we can assume that the hydrostatic pressure of the tissue fluid is 0. So now the question wants us to find out which is true of the x end. So our focus should only be on the x end. Okay, so we only pay attention to this part of the question and we completely ignore this part of the question. So the formula, remember, is HP1 minus HP2. So HP1 is 35 millimeters of mercury, HP2 is 0. So HP at the moment is 35. Then we minus OP1 with OP2. So 5 minus 28. As I said, we ignore the negative. So 5 minus 28 will give us negative 23. Okay, so now to find net pressure, we just have to calculate the difference between the net HP and net OP, once again ignoring the negative value. So 35 minus 23 gives you 12. And the final answer here is in positive, meaning that filtration occurred. So if 12 and filtration occurs, it has to be at the arteriole. So this is how we apply either formula 1 or formula 2. Remember the rule: during calculation, ignore the negative value. Only consider the negative value once you have arrived at the final answer. So now we have come to the end of today's video, in which we have covered both 8.1e and 8.1f. Goodbye and have a nice day.